The story of this Marmite squeezy IPA paper is really about how a brand facing a kind of challenge where it feels like they're plateauing, it feels like they're going off the boil, how it can really evolve, but how it can evolve in a way that brings along its most loyal customers.
Really rather good.
From about 1996, Marmite launched the Love-Hate campaign, which ran through to about 2002 when we did a centenary, 100 years of love and hate.
Between 2002 and 2005, we realised that this Love and Hate campaign had really begun to run its course, and those penetration gains we were getting from those lapsed people were beginning to plateau.
It's so reliant on people eating it on toast. Problem is that most toast is eaten at breakfast. In fact, about 65% of toast is eaten at breakfast. And what we were starting to see was that adults were skipping breakfast. So I think we predicted that by 2012, 40% of breakfast occasions would be skipped.
What Unilever needed was profit generation from Marmite. Marmite's a very profitable brand, so the faster we grow it, the more profit we generate for Unilever. That was the main challenge. We needed to accelerate from about 3% growth to about 5 to 10% growth.
Research shows that the most successful strategy is usually to increase penetration rather than weight of usage for an FMCG brand. But this was a rare example where penetration wasn't going to work. We pretty much hit the buffers on penetration. We couldn't really expect to get many more users than we had.
So we really had to look for a new growth opportunity, and that opportunity was all around usage.
We only needed to get one extra usage every 7 weeks in order to get the 5% volume growth that we needed.
We thought about it very carefully and we did some calculations, and we realised that sandwiches were the main area that we could expand into. There's about 8 or 9 billion sandwich occasions in the UK every year. It's a huge part of our culture. Marmite's got about, or had about, 1.5% share of those sandwiches. We worked out that if we could increase that share from 1.5 to 2.5, we could get about 8% growth on the brand, just like that.
The idea was really to do, quite simply, Marmite Squeezy. There are some really good things about Marmite Squeezy. Obviously, it's much easier for the family to use, little kids to use, and also it's quite a lot less thick and gloopy, so you can spread it on cold bread and butter without it ripping up the bread. So it had some real sort of functional advantages for people.
The glass jar had been in use for 100 years on Marmite, so it had been absolutely part of the culture. And what we were doing here is really challenging people's perceptions of what Marmite is and what Marmite could be, but to really make it easier and more practical for them to use.
So what's interesting about them, the Marmite kind of lovers, is that they are both a blessing and a curse. They believe they own it, and they don't want you to mess around with it. They don't necessarily want you to change it. It's their brand and the way they've always used it, and they will complain like hell, really loudly, if you do something they don't like.
What we try to do with the plastic squeezy bottle is to bring as much of that heritage and the design, iconography of the glass jar to it. So effectively we kept it that bulb shape, though we toned it upside down. We kept all the graphical design essentially the same, but the format and the usage was different.
So stage one was really all about seeding the launch, and the first thing we did with the PR company Splendid was to send out Marmite to some key lovers, get them wearing their Squeeze Me t-shirts with pride. And the second thing we did was we were also going to delist the smallest jar, the 57-gram jar, so take it out of production. And we decided it would be a really nice idea, instead of that being a bad thing, to turn it into a good thing. So we eBayed the last 57-gram jar and the very first squeezy jar for charity. And that was got a really good response, actually. I think somebody paid about £250 for that last tiny 57-gram jar and the first new squeezy.
Well, the new product was launched in March 2006. It was a great success. The decline in sales stopped. But sales didn't really start to grow until the product was advertised.
The next stage was to go on to traditional media, onto TV, and we launched an ad called Broken Arm, which actually showed just how difficult Marmite could be to use, particularly, of course, you've broken your arm.
Well, the TV ad was very, very single-minded. It needed to announce the format, the packaging format of Squeezy Marmite and the benefit that it gives. And it dramatised in a very, very humorous way, in a typical Marmite way, and in a way that you could see was a very love and hate reaction to using Marmite. So we made that into an extreme, into a bit of a caricature in a sort of way, to show people what the product was, but also to show that its role was there for them.
New squeezy Marmite.
Stage 3 activity was really to engage the Marmite community and get them trying the product, get them playing around with it.
Well, the Marmite activity was partly advertising and partly on-pack offer of a Marmite kit. And again, this was very single-mindedly there to show the benefit of this product, how controllable it was, how you could squeeze it in such a way that you could actually draw amazing pictures with it. The pictures that we then had drawn by the illustrators were love and hate figures, or love and hate themes. So it was linking the product, its performance, what it could do, directly to love and hate, and then engaged people in that by encouraging them to squeeze it for themselves through the on-pack promotion.
Promotions company came up with the idea of a kit which you could actually stencil patterns on. We ran a competition on a website so that people could draw things they loved or hated on toast, and there was actually then a gallery. So the very best entries went up in a gallery in Dover Street. They were judged by an artist. There was a proper party, and it was great. It kind of kept the love-hate theme running right through the activity, and people wanted to get involved.
We then had to move on and actually encourage people to use it in the way that we intended, which is to put it in sandwiches. We then came up with a campaign that inspired and provoked people to put Marmite in sandwiches.
Paddington, you'll remember from childhood, always keeps a marmalade sandwich for emergencies. I've always had marmalade, thought Paddington. Maybe I ought to try something different.
Paddington was a great choice because of the emotional resonance. Paddington taps into all sorts of childhood memories, all sorts of connotations of Britishness, in the same way that Marmite does. There's also a rational reason for choosing Paddington, in that Paddington eats sandwiches, and that's exactly what we were trying to get people to do.
Really rather good.
It was really warm, it was really sweet, it had that sense of nostalgia, it was appealing to our Marmite mums, those who'd grown up in the 70s and 80s with Paddington. And here was a really famous sandwich eater who was stuck in his ways with the marmalade sandwich, and he was trying Marmite for a change, and that's exactly what we wanted people to do.
Oh dear. I think we'd better get you home. Squeezy Marmite. Sandwiches need never be done.
The advertising for Squeezy was fantastically successful. Millward Brown test all of Unilever's advertising, and they said that Broken Arm, which was the first ad, was in the top 3% of ads they'd ever tested in the UK, and Paddington was in the top 1% of ads they'd ever tested in the UK. I think it's also interesting that Marketing Week runs something called AdWatch, where they look at which of the ads people recall over the last 2 weeks. And Marmite was up there in the top 20, along with other brands like Burger King and WH Smith's, which spend about 5 to 10 times as much money. So it was one of those ads which you didn't need to see that many times. When you did see it, you loved it, and it captured your imagination.
As soon as we ran the ads, volume started to increase and carried on increasing for the next couple of years, and at a higher price, and that meant much more profit for Unilever. If you're going to try to change a product that people feel that emotional about, you need to use an emotional medium, and TV is probably the emotional medium par excellence.
The role of TV was really important, actually. Firstly, to make sure that we reach the mass audience. Second, to kind of get people talking. And third, I think it always drives that empathy, engagement and emotional capacity, which is so important with Marmite. It's not really just a functional brand. It's one of those brands people love, and telly is great at doing that job.
The great thing about using a TV ad like Marmite is it didn't just get individuals engaged with the brand, it also got the press, the wider community engaged with the brand. We got lots of press coverage, lots of publicity, lots of people talking about Marmite, and that's exactly what we were looking for.
So the TV was all about inspiration and the idea. The radio was then placed in the morning and late at night when people make their sandwiches. They're in the kitchen, and it was about delivering the message very simply and very clearly to provoke that usage. Get Marmite out of the cupboard, put it in that cheese sandwich that you happen to be making right there and then.
When we looked into the sales data in more detail, we could see exactly where the volume was coming from. Just as we intended, it was coming from people buying more Marmite rather than more people buying Marmite. We were particularly interested to note that people were beginning to buy bigger jars of Marmite, because that's a really good sign that they're changing their long-term consumption of Marmite.
Well, overall, we managed to improve the whole profit mix of the portfolio through the launch of Squeezy. By encouraging more sandwich usage, we did grow average rate of purchase significantly, and that led, along with other activities through the year, to growth of more than 10% in 2007 and just under 10% in 2008. So sustained, very high growth, way exceeding our expectations of 5%.
The advertising generated a huge amount of talk value. I think we managed to get about 270 pieces of PR, which actually had a value of about 1.4 million and reached about 276 million people. So pretty successful.
When we actually wanted to measure the sales effect of the advertising, the ultimate way to do that is econometrics. Econometrics takes out all the different factors that drive sales. With our econometric model, we were able to show that the advertising was driving about half of the sales growth.
Well, the econometric model measured a payback of £1.30 for every pound that we spent on the campaign, which for us obviously is incredibly gratifying. It's good to know that our money is going to good use. However, that's a short-term payback. We had a long-term intention with this campaign, which was to build a new habit for people. So over the long term, it's really satisfying to see the payback coming through in average rate of purchase. Those same loyal people being even more loyal to Marmite will only boost us in the long term.
We managed to get, I think, about 9 million more sandwiches with Marmite in it and about 72,000 kilograms of extra Marmite being used, which is a lot of Marmite jars. So it was a very successful campaign.
I think it's all very well having marketing objectives like increase average rate of purchase, etc. I think the thing that I learned out of this was that we really had to go right to the very core of the product. There's no point in asking people to do something if they can't do it, if they're not finding it easy or convenient. I think the real key to the success of this is that we address the product first, we recognise that, and then we followed up with the inspiration and the provocation through the advertising. It was only by doing both of those that we could succeed.
Marmite is over 100 years old now, and there aren't many brands that can have a new lease of life at that age. But I think what we did here was, with a clever combination of new product and some great communications, we were able to jumpstart sales again.
I think one of the nicest things about the launch of Marmite Squeezy was the sense that we didn't try and impose a marketing solution on people. We actually built a community, got them to feel they were involved, got them feeling partly responsible for the brand and for its future. And that's incredibly valuable. So in the future, when we want to do new products, when we have ideas for things, we've got a group of people out there who we know we can reach out to and get their feelings, get their impressions, and really get them helping us on the side of the brand.